Zombie tech.
Hey guys.
Hello.
We're here with Roy Eltham.
Hello.
Yeah. So, today, this is our first go around with this thing, so it's definitely going to be rough.
That's okay.
Roy has willingly agreed to be our guinea pig for episode 1.
I've got some sandpaper here. I can smooth off some of the edges.
The basic idea here is we're going to have interesting people on. We didn't have any around, so we called Roy.
Hey, that's not true.
Hey, I resemble that remark.
Actually, Roy's a pretty interesting guy. He's a amateur electrical engineer of the hobbyist type. He's also a senior technical architect at Sony Online Entertainment. He does some pretty sweet graphics stuff for them. And recently sort of participated in the 555 contest and submitted a very interesting project. And I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Not really, sort of. He actually was, and he in fact made it to the second round.
Yeah, and the creators of the contest made sure to mention him, even though he didn't win a prize, because his project was quite interesting.
So Roy's a winner in our eyes.
Yeah, I think I won just doing the project in the first place.
Yeah, so can you tell us what you're up to with that?
Well, first of all, it's a pinball machine.
Mm-hmm.
And I started with a blank piece of plywood and a bunch of pinball parts that I bought online at various pinball repair sites. And learned how to route and use a drill press and various other woodworking techniques, kind of the hard way, destroying some wood on the way.
So
And put the pieces onto the board. And the main part of my entry for the 555 contest was a scoring unit that used little 555 circuits to control servos and position them at key spots to point at numbers on a scoreboard thing, and then cascading several of them together to create a interesting score mechanism that I called Cinescore, because it was based off of an idea from Tymkrs, who goes by Sinistar online. And so I called it Cinescore as sort of a nod to him.
Yeah, I saw the videos of your score system for that on your YouTube channel. It's pretty interesting how it works. It's got these sort of like clock dials, and when you bump off the correct things off the playfield, it moves the score up. And when you get enough points, it actually rolls that one back and rolls the next one up.
Yeah. It's actually using a combination of 4017 Cascade timer chips with the 555s and some 4066 hex inverter, what are they? Switches, sorry. Hex switches. And the idea is that the normal servo control circuit with a 555 timer, you have a pot, resistor pot to adjust back and forth, and it moves the servo arm back and forth. But I wanted to control discrete locations without having to turn a dial manually. So I found a series of resistors to run through instead of the pot, and I switched between them using the 4017 and 4066 chips to direct the 555 circuit to the right position. And then on the 417, after it gets past the end of one of them, it triggers the next one up to go and resets itself, which is how it does that rolling over effect.
Now, these days, most anybody would typically use, say, a propeller or an Arduino or something like that to do this kind of a home project. I think I've seen Ben Heck uses props for that sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
He's got his latest pinball machine has 3 propellers on the main board for doing tracking all the switches and elements and doing the score and all that fun stuff.
I heard him talking about his music engine that he's putting together for that too, which sounds pretty cool. So you must have learned a lot about doing it in that older, more discrete hardware kind of way.
Yeah, well, I spent probably the bulk of the time messing around on the breadboard with the 555 and the other chips and bunches of resistors and capacitors, just figuring it out. I didn't really know very much about that kind of electronics at all. I hadn't done any 555 circuits prior to the contest.
Oh wow. So
And,
what resources did you use to help with?
Well, I have Forrest Mims books, his little series of notebooks, and one of them has all kinds of 555 circuits in it, and it's partially based on one of those, but there's also another circuit that was online that was open source that was how to control the servo using one, because the servo you need to send out a pulse train at a regular interval, and the pulse width determines where the servo will position itself. And you can adjust the pulse width by changing the resistance on one of the positions in the circuit, and it will adjust the size of the pulse to move the servo around.
Now, Forrest was a guy, well, still is a guy. He's well known for writing sort of introduction to electronics books for, was it Radio Shack?
Yeah.
And he was actually one of the judges for the final round there for the 555 contest.
Right. Him and Hans, I don't know how to pronounce the last name, the guy that actually invented the 555 chip, were the final judges.
That was pretty exciting. Forrest was in the chat room the night that they did the announcements for who won.
Right. And he was chatting with all kinds of people there. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, nice to see him in there.
Yeah, being directly involved like that is really neat for everyone. A lot of people there have him as their hero for learning electronics from.
Yeah, I've heard so many people talking about him lately because of that contest, and it's just great to hear that he's still getting credit today for the work he's done.
Right, it's really cool.
And I think it's really great that you've learned some of the older school ways of doing things, because in the case of a zombie outbreak, you don't necessarily have access to the most modern technology, and you have to put things together from bits that you can pull off of existing equipment.
Right, and one of the things that's interesting about the 555 in particular is that it works with so many different components, and you can hobble it together with almost anything and it'll still function, as evidenced by a lot of the entries. They were just doing all kinds of weird stuff with them. And more modern electronics are a little bit more touchy, and their power ranges are more specific, and you have to hook them up a specific way. And how are you going to do that when you're getting attacked by zombies?
Yeah. The analog stuff is much better for that situation.
Exactly. And a little bit more resilient to dropping on the ground, or just getting damaged from running away from zombies, or they might get a little blood on them and they'll still work if you clean them off.
So what are your plans for the pinball machine? I know it's heading out to what's that
UPU.
propeller meetup?
Yeah, well, first, the weekend before UPEW, there's a pinball show in Dixon, which is about an hour away from Rockland, maybe a little longer, but it's up there around Sacramento area, to a pinball show called Pinagogo.
Rockland's the headquarters for Parallax, who makes the propeller, right?
Right. So I'm planning on taking the pinball machine up, and I'll be sharing it at the pinball show, and then taking it again with me over to Parallax for the UPEW.
Very cool.
And part of the thing with UPEW is that they do a thing where they start on Saturday and then they go all night until Sunday afternoon. And in the late hours of the night, after everyone's done their talks and whatnot, they have everyone just sort of hangs out and works on projects and debugs things, works on robots or whatever. And I'm going to work on the pinball machine, converting it up to use a propeller to sense and just control a fancier video display for the score and stuff like that. It'll be sort of an alternate control board. I'll have the 555 controller scoring circuit, and that'll still work, but I can unplug that and plug in a propeller board and have it control the pinball machine.
So you're making it all pin compatible then?
Yeah, there'll be a header with all the sensors, because all of the elements on the board are still going to go through filter chips and whatnot to buffer the signals so that you don't fry the main scoring unit or the propeller chip. And so I'll have all those on that'll just be mounted right onto the board, onto the bottom of the pinball machine. And then I'll have like a 40 pin or 32 pin connector that I can plug in either the 555 scoring unit or the propeller.
I look forward to seeing how the project turns out and how it looks once you actually get it into a case and all fancy in your living room there.
Yeah, well, the main playfield board is pretty much standard size. There's no fixed dimensions for pinball machines. They kind of vary a little bit. Certain brands are always this wide and this long, but they're generally around 4 feet by 2 feet plus or minus a couple inches. And so that's what this is. So I should be able to make a fairly standard looking case for it.
Another one of your projects that uses the propeller that I was interested in was your quadcopter.
Yeah. I haven't successfully flown it stably yet. I've managed to get it to lift off the ground a few inches and wobble around, but then I land it right away so that I don't destroy it.
So
I've managed to break a few propellers already.
Oh. So what?
Not
Sorry.
Not the chip, but the actual propeller blades.
Oh. So what exactly is a quadcopter? I mean, I know that sounds like a helicopter, but
they sometimes call them UAVs or UFOs or something like that. But it's basically a apparatus that looks like a big plus or an X, and there's 4 propeller rotors, spaced out around to create a hovering helicopter-like vehicle, except instead of one big propeller rotor on the top, it's got 4 smaller ones spread out around the edge.
So is this like zombie distraction?
Well, it would be used for like surveillance.
Yeah.
Oh.
Send one of these out with a camera on it.
Oh, that's even better.
And you go flying around above the ground where the zombies can't get to it, and you could see where they're at.
Oh, okay.
I hear that Google Street View is now using some of these to take pictures of our bathroom windows.
That and also just to get a cheaper mechanism to do the bird's eye view type stuff that they have, because the common misconception when you look at satellite view on Google is they're using satellites to go all the way down, but they don't really.
No,
The satellites stop at some pretty high up there height, and then it's all flyovers with planes and helicopters that do the lower stuff. And to get more updated photos at a cheaper cost, they're planning on using these UAVs, quadcopter UAVs, to fly over little neighborhoods and towns and stuff to update the pictures.
I think zombie reconnaissance is a much better use of the technology.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can, and in fact, we could potentially, mount lasers or other interesting stuff on them to help targeting. Like you could use a laser to pinpoint something, and then somebody else could see the laser from very far away and aim at it with the big guns,
turret guns that we're gonna have.
yeah, flamethrowers and other
Excellent.
weaponry that we're gonna build to fight off these zombies.
Excellent. Excellent.
If we made a big enough one, we could actually put guns right on it.
We were chatting the other night about coming up with some interesting ideas for how to solve the balancing.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to try some of your neural network stuff to do that.
It seems like a good match for the problem because it's a very organic uh, sort of issue, the balancing back and forth so that it can stay a stable platform.
Right. And some of the ones that are out there do reasonably well, but if it gets windy or if there's any kinds of change in the currents in the air, they get really unstable until they fall into something a little more normal for the wind. So it's pretty difficult to get them to be stable in all conditions. And having some kind of neural network control of it might work a little better for that.
The general idea that we had there is that if the unit were able to sort of log the conditions at any particular moment and what action it took and references what happened and how much it had to adjust for the counter steering, if you will, over time you could build up enough data to be able to train a neural network to choose the right actions to minimize the amount of counter steering necessary.
Right.
Very interesting.
And you could probably even get it to a point where your controller input from the RF unit would, instead of just being a simple dumb I want to go up, down, left, right, or whatever, to the main thing, it could be inputs into the neural network that could then choose the best path to do what you want it to do, which is, hover higher, go down, lean, turn, or whatever.
You could also do fun stuff like say, I want you to go to this GPS location.
Yeah.
And the neural net would just be able to figure out a way to make that happen in an efficient way.
Right. It could just pick the most direct route for itself from wherever it's at, instead of you flying it manually over there.
Then you're into interesting automatous operation, which I think you're also into on more grounded robotics platforms as well.
Right. I know that there's quite a few people that have done different robots that try to go to specific GPS locations, and it's a little more difficult on the ground because of the obstacles in the way. Whereas with a UAV, you get high enough up in the air and there's pretty much no obstacles.
I know you've been working on a balancing robot on the ground, right?
Right. I have a two-wheeled robot that I've been trying over and over again and failing mostly to get to balance. I think some of the issue is more the motor controller circuitry that I'm working with is not really being driven at the proper spec, so it doesn't respond quickly enough. So that's part of why I'm having the problems I'm having.
So you need it to be more twitchy.
Yeah, well, I need it to respond more quickly to the off balance state so that it can start rotating the other way. The other solution is to build it really tall, but I'd rather get it working with the height that it's at now because I don't want to have a really tall one.
So it's either make a Segway or get it to work.
Sort of. I mean, the Segway has, most of the balancing will work even if you don't have the big tall handlebars coming up. They're just there for the human to hold on to.
Oh. So we're going to go toppling over.
It's really more, if I were to build it taller, I'd have to put the weight up high also. And that helps it because then the wheels can push out underneath the weight and move themselves back and forth under the weight to balance the whole system.
Sure.
There are plenty of people that have gotten robots that are about the size of mine, which is about maybe a foot tall from the ground up, to work. It's just that you have to have the right size wheels and you have to have appropriate motor control. And part of the problem is the controller board I'm using, the H-bridge chip to drive the motors is supposed to be driven at a little bit higher voltage than the motors are running at, which is 7.2 volts. And so I need to probably get different motors that I can run at like 12 volts. And then the H-bridge chip will respond better.
I see.
So a couple questions. One, why 2 wheels? And two, what's this robot gonna do?
Well, the robot is just an exercise in trying to make a balancing robot on 2 wheels. That's why it's 2 wheels. If it were three, then it wouldn't be balancing,
Right. Okay.
right?
Sure.
There are some people that have gone as far as trying to make a sort of one-wheeled thing, but it's not really a wheel; it's a ball that they roll on. I've seen a couple that are these funky omni-wheel single wheels where it's a wheel. It looks like a single wheel, but it's actually made up of smaller wheels that are turned the other direction. So
Oh,
it can turn itself normally, or it can run the little wheels inside to
I
go
see.
sideways.
I see.
But it's really 2 wheels then, just
Right.
all in one package.
Right. Right. Right.
Very complicated devices, but the standard just 2 wheels side by side balance spot. I mean, the one I'm basing mine off of is one that's in the propeller book, programming and customizing the multi-core propeller microcontroller. There's a chapter in there about doing a balancing robot, and the main difference between mine and that one is I'm trying to use all parts that are available from Parallax, the sensors and whatnot. He used some weird, not quite easy to get parts in his because it was prior to them having the parts available.
Okay. Gotcha.
And as far as a final goal for this, what would you like to see happen with it?
The balance spot?
Yeah.
Well, I'd like it to be able to balance and drive around. So I could hook up a remote control and navigate it around and it could still stay balanced.
More surveillance then, I think.
Now,
Yeah.
with Parallax, you've been working with them a little bit on one of their projects.
Yeah, well, they have their compiler for the propeller is written in x86 assembly, and Chip Gracie, who is their main inventor and co-president of the company or whatever, wrote it many years ago when the prop first came out, all in x86 assembly, and no one else there really knows how to deal with that. And because I've done a fair amount of that, I've offered to convert it up to C++, C mostly, with a little bit of extra stuff from C++, so that we can get it to where they can update it and add features. And they're planning on open sourcing that to allow other people to make their own compiler extensions or replace the compiler entirely with a different one.
So you've really been having to get into the guts of how the original one worked then.
Right. Well, the x86 assembly code is producing the direct bytecode for spin as well as being the assembler for the PASM code. So it does both things all in one. And so I'm getting a lot more familiar with the low-level propeller innards because of this, which is nice.
And once this is in place and they open source it, do you think we're going to see some more standardized sort of C implementations on the platform?
Well, this isn't making it so that you can use C on the propeller. It's converting their compiler into C so that people can use the compiler and add features to it. And one of the things everyone wants is a preprocessor, so we can put a preprocessor into the compiler so it can handle that kind of stuff. And I've been talking with Ken and Jeff Martin at Parallax about doing some of this stuff so that it'll be in their official tool and officially supported.
Yeah, I know a few people have put together tools to be able to compile other languages down to
Right.
that, but nothing official out of Parallax yet.
Yeah, well, I know that they have talked about they are internally working on a some form of translator to go from C to those propeller, PASM, and spin syntax, so that you can take some pre-existing C code and translate it.
It'll be
And
really
get
it'll be really interesting to see how that affects getting some new people involved in the community.
Yeah. Well, they're really trying to be a little more professional and cater to the more professional people that want certain kinds of things in their tools, and they want to be able to use C and stuff like that. Prior to that, they've catered more to the hobbyist and the education markets, but they realized that in order to be attractive to a commercial market, that they need to do some upgrades and adjustments to their tools. And I think that as time goes by, they'll start having more and more of their tools be cross-platform. For one, the propeller tool is only on Windows, and one of the things that doing this conversion to C++ will allow them to do is produce a version that can go on Linux or Mac.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that have a Windows box, and the only reason they have it is for the prop tool,
Right.
which is interesting.
Right. Or they'll have the dual boot thing on the Mac, so that they can run Windows just for the prop tool. Although currently you can use some of the other third-party applications that work on the Mac or Linux. There's the BST tool and Homespun, I think it is, that both run on multi-platform situation.
Yeah.
But it's just not official. So a lot of commercial people aren't going to go looking for a third-party, user-supported tool to work with their chip. They want something from Parallax themselves.
It's not guaranteed to work right, and if it doesn't work right, you can't call up customer support and say, hey.
Right, exactly. Whereas if they get their tool converted up and working on all the platforms, then they're going to support it. And that's their plan, I'm pretty sure. I'm not at liberty to talk about everything I've talked with them on, but I know that their intention is to get it cross-platform and to add the features that they think are attractive to the commercial customers.
And I imagine they're planning on starting out with this sort of situation for the Prop 2.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Prop 2 will end up, having this from the beginning. They'll have the source code built, probably not in x86 assembly anymore. I may even end up getting involved with them on that. I don't know. I haven't talked to them. I'm going to be meeting with them just before UPEW to talk about the future of this project. And one of them might be working with Chip and Jeff Martin to figure out what they want to do for the Prop 2, which I'm pretty excited about. It's a nice looking chip.
Yeah.
Well, I, for one, appreciate the work that you're putting in on it.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of half doing it for myself because I want some of those features that aren't there. Coming from the more professional programming side of things, I'm used to having certain things in my tools when I'm coding, and I miss them when I'm using the prop tool. And it would be nice to get them in there.
I think it's really great that they're taking advantage of some of the resources in the community to make this happen.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. They've done it with a bunch of the other community members too. People like Nick over at Gadget Gangster, they're starting to sell his products and support them more directly. And they've done that with some of the other people. A lot of their products are actually designed by members of the community.
Yeah, he's been doing some fun stuff over there. He likes to play with the SID cog, and we use that in one of our projects. So we've got some stuff in common with him.
Yeah, I don't know if you know, but a few of Parallax products are actually made by Joe Grand.
Yeah.
Grand Ideas. And he's working on new stuff for them right now. And then there's, as I've already mentioned, Nick at Gadget Gangster has done some stuff for them. And there's another guy on the forums that goes by, I think it's Phil Pilgrim or something like that. But he's done a few products for them too. So, and they're all community members that have been around forever. And it's really cool because they're also on the forums all the time. You can ask them questions about everything, and they're more than willing to help.
Cool. Very cool.
And it's kind of neat community to be involved with. There's a lot of stuff there that isn't in some of the other communities around some of the other products on the market.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to have an expensive haircut and thick rim glasses to, fit in.
Exactly.
So anyway, I don't see any application for any of this kind of talk to zombie apocalypse because this is all compiler stuff, and it's like a good thing to be able to make your own compiler, and I think that applies. But this chip stuff, it's good, and it's good that we can have access to it so easily right now. But what happens if you can't get a hold of something like a prop?
Yeah, I don't know.
Jerry Ellsworth likes to try to cook up her own chips at home.
Yeah, she's managed to make a few transistors. She hasn't gotten as far as making an actual integrated circuit yet, as far as I know. Just a simple, transistor circuit is all she's made. It gets a little bit difficult when you have to do a little bit more complicated layout on the silicon itself.
You can build a lot with discrete transistors, though.
Oh yeah, but right now she's used I don't know, the one I saw was a few inches. It was like about an inch or a half inch by 2 or 3 inches, and it had 5 transistors on it. So it's not super efficient because real transistors are already much smaller than that. Obviously, she could do them a lot smaller with a little bit more refinement on her home building mechanism there, and I'm sure she's trying to do that in between all the other stuff she's been doing. She's doing all kinds of videos for different people.
Right.
Yeah.
We need to talk to her and get her to advance that a little farther so we can use it when the zombies
When
attack.
the zombies attack.
Yeah, Jerry would be an awesome person to have on your zombie apocalypse team, really.
Yeah.
So what would the first thing? What's the first thing you would do when finding out that a zombie apocalypse had come upon us?
Well, for one, I'd probably get out of Southern California.
Why is that?
Because Southern California is likely to be like a central area full of zombies.
They like
It'll
the
probably
sun?
It'll probably start in LA. I mean, they're already half zombies anyway.
Oh boy.
So,
We love you, LA. We do.
so I'd probably start heading out east, heading more towards your guys' neck of the woods.
Woohoo, Midwest.
Yeah, Minnesota's probably going to be a pretty safe place when it comes down to it.
That's true. That's true.
Less population density.
Yeah, the zombies are all going to be heading towards the high population density areas first,
Yep.
I think, because that's where the strongest brain smell will be at.
So what technology would you bring along?
Well, I'd load up my car with all my electronic stuff and all my tools,
What?
power tools.
Okay, and say top 3 power tools / tools.
Well, obviously you have to have the drill,
Yep.
The-
Yep.
cordless drill. I have a big Ryobi 18-volt cordless drill.
Okay.
I really like my new drill press, but that's kind of big and heavy. I mean, it might be good for throwing at a zombie because it'll knock them over, but it might slow me down a little bit trying to load that up into the car.
So you need to get a Preston like we have. He's handheld.
Well, you already have one. See,
There
so
you
if I'm
go.
heading out to your place, I could,
He's like
leave out the drill press and bandsaw because you guys already got that.
Yeah, we got portable ones. Chibi.
I don't know if it counts as a power tool, but my soldering station
Yep.
it is a power tool, so I guess that's number 2.
Okay.
And then number 3, I'd probably have to go with the reciprocating saw. Because it's
And
just a beast of a saw.
Might I suggest you take a couple of those solar panels off your roof and throw them on the top of your
Hey.
car and bring those out?
That's a good
Yeah,
idea.
I
That's
could
a very
definitely
good
bring
idea.
some solar panels, and I've got a bunch of different kinds of batteries. Got some SLA batteries and some NiCads and some NIMH batteries
Oh yeah, handy stuff.
and some LiPo batteries. That's
You're a
what I use.
battery guy then.
Well, I just I started out with just the NiCads, but they don't work out too well after a while. Uh, the NIMH is pretty good, but when you want the most power for density, the lipos are the best.
I think in
The
the case of this sort of apocalyptic situation, lead acid batteries would probably be a good thing to collect.
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely have several of the SLA batteries, sealed lead acid batteries. I use those on my larger robots because you need to have a little bit more oomph for those bigger motors. But
Okay, so I know besides your quadcopter project.
Well, I got one more project that I wanted to make sure we covered a little bit today.
Oh, go for it.
It's early days on it yet, but I think that people should be aware.
I'm just being distracting. Go ahead, Whisker.
Roy's been working on a little 2D graphics layer, just a sort of a map between Direct 3D and an API. And it's something that I'm planning on using for a game that we're putting together for Tymkrs here. And I was just wondering if you had anything you wanted to say about that.
yeah, well, it's I'm calling it Res 2D for now. It's like Roy's extremely simple 2D library. Uh, it's basically I figured out or didn't figure it out, but I've done this many times in the past where I've used D3D to produce 2D graphics that are reasonably fast and give you some of the 3D features without being a 3D engine. So you get some cool things like alpha blending of multiple layers and some other cool shader tricks that I can throw in there later on. We can do lighting and whatnot in 2D space. And it can be pretty interesting to play with. But anyway, I decided I wanted to make a library that was generic enough that anyone could use it, and we could replace the backend, which currently is using D3D, with something for OpenGL, so it'll run on the other platforms, or even some other completely foreign graphics environment.
Like some mobile platform.
Some mobile platform. I'm actually thinking down the line to the Prop 2 having a version that runs on that, just because it's got some interesting graphics capabilities coming along. But the basic idea is that there's this generic API that you write your application to. This is fairly standard stuff, but I've segregated out all the D3D and Windows stuff into the library, and so you don't actually ever talk to it directly. And then you write your game or your demo or application or whatever to the API that Res 2D provides, and we can do whatever we want behind the scenes to get it on the screen.
One important thing to note here is that Roy is very kindly putting this up under the MIT license, so pretty much there's no reason why anyone shouldn't want to be able to use this.
Yeah, I haven't put it up there yet, but I will be once it's a little more complete.
Yeah,
It only
it's
does
still
some-
early days. We're helping test it with the development of our little thing just to help work the bugs out on it.
Right. Currently, it just does some basic 2D layer graphics and a little bit of mouse input. But I'll be adding sprites and keyboard control to it, and then once I get those working, I'll be putting it up on my website to allow anyone to download it, and I'll have some demos and a little bit of basic documentation up there.
We're using it to do sort of a retro 8-bit style looking game. And it just looks great when you tell it to multiply all the pixels by 4 times the size. It's just great.
Yeah. I just do that by, when you're actually rendering your 2D stuff with the API commands, it's just going into a texture. And then I render that texture onto a 3D quad that's flat up to the screen. And because it's a texture like that, I can stretch it up as big as you want and make the pixels as big as you want or as little as you want. And you like that feature of the either 4 or 8 times size pixels, so they look really retro.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good so far. The demo that Roy put together is Conway's Game of Life. And what resolution were you running that at?
Well, I had a couple different versions. The main one I was testing was 1024 by 512, but then stretched that up to larger screen, double that basically, because I have a large monitor.
And you were getting pretty good frame rates out of it, right?
Yeah, I was going, even with the screen pretty full of stuff, it was still going over 60 hertz.
Lovely.
Not bad at all. Not bad at all. It's going to be plenty of horsepower for what we're using it for.
Yeah, and you're going to be using a lot more CPU power for the game itself with your neural networks and other gameplay things. The graphics needs to be fast so it doesn't take up very much time away from your other processing.
Yeah, we're going to be using it for our demos of the artificial life stuff that we've been doing for Timemaker Television.
Right. Moving away from that Visual Basic 6A.
Yeah. I love prototyping in VB6. It's just, it's my natural born language, if you will. Slowly learning C. Roy's been helping a lot with that, which I appreciate.
He's going to the dark side.
The dark side of C and C++.
Da-da-da.
I know a lot of people are very, I don't want religious about which language they prefer you use. I kind of don't care too much. I'm not that picky. I use mostly C and C++ just because of work, where we pretty much have to, but I also do a fair amount of C# work, and I've done little bits in a bunch of other languages. When I work on the propeller, I use Spin and PASM directly. I think it's a natural fit there. I've done a little bit of VB programming, but not too much. And in the distant past, I used to use Quick Basic.
Sure.
And various stuff like that, all the way going back to like the VIC-20 with Commodore Basic. So
yeah, Commodore Basic was where I got my start.
Yeah. I actually first learned any programming at all on a Wang mini computer, and the BASIC that was on it was a Microsoft BASIC, so it was very close to the Commodore BASIC.
Going back and looking at the C64 load-up screen and seeing that it's, by Microsoft, it's just, it gets me every time.
They've been around for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went up that whole chain. I started with obviously I did the Wang mini computer. I was a student aide at a naval base, and they had some around there. That's how I learned that. But then I got a Tymkrs Sinclair 1000 as my first computer way back in the day from Kmart on layaway. $38, baby.
Nice.
I saved it up.
Nice.
I was like 11.
That's great.
But then not long after that, I ended up getting a Commodore VIC-20, and then Commodore 64, and the Commodore 128, Commodore Amiga. I went up the whole Commodore side of things. One of my friends did the Atari thing, so we would go back and forth with whose is better, the Atari 800 or the Commodore 64, and then he got the ST and I got the Amiga, and it was pretty funny. We both ended up with IBMs after a while, PC clones.
Yeah.
Just like everyone else.
It was sort of a sad day when we all replaced our Commodores.
But I learned Turbo C++ 1.0. on the IBM. That's the first language I learned on the IBM. I actually learned C on the Amiga, and then C++ came out after I had already learned C. And back then, C++ wasn't that much. They've added a lot to it since then.
It's kind of a big beast now.
Yeah, I don't use a lot of the C++ features. I mostly just like to have the classes for organization and abstraction of things. It helps in that area a little bit, so I use that part of it. But I don't use STL, and I don't use a lot of the other more advanced features of the language too often.
And
Obviously, we use some of it at work.
now that you've done a compiler project, you're more capable to be able to put together your own language from scratch now, right?
I could, but I don't know if I want to do that.
Well, it's one of those things where you have to either really, really like just be fascinated by it or have a reason to.
Right. I might get involved a little bit if they ask me to with the Propeller 2, because they're going to be doing a new version of Spin, and obviously all the old Spin has to work, but I'm sure they're going to want to bring in some new stuff to take advantage of the new capabilities of the Propeller 2. So there might be a little bit of helping out with that. Just because I'm helping do the conversion now, I'll be really familiar with it.
Yeah, once you've done compiler work, you've really earned your your stars there. That's the
Yeah.
deep magic.
Yeah, well, I mean, looking at this code that Chip wrote, and he wrote this many years ago, it's pretty interesting stuff. It's really clever and elegant in how it goes about doing things. And of course, he's also constrained by x86 assembler, which is one of the less optimal languages. You only have a few registers and really kind of convoluted syntax in some cases.
So, what do you think would be the better direction to go? Trying to do your own chip fab and come up with your own compiler to bootstrap it up, or to just sort of take the garbage picker sort of tactics and collect all the technology from the existing ruins of society and build up from there?
Well, I think that building a chip fab post zombie apocalypse will be kind of difficult because, I mean, it's still difficult now, even pre zombie apocalypse, to build a good working chip fab that gets consistent results. So it might be a better idea, at least initially, to go find the warehouses full of already made chips and just try to utilize them as much as possible to bootstrap some things going. But I would definitely want to target long-term building up from the ground a proper mechanism for building chips. Get an actual chip fab going and build new chips and new technology.
IBM builds its supercomputers right up the road from our place here.
Lovely.
So, on that day, I think I would definitely go dumpster diving there. Get me
Yeah, that would be a good plan.
some blue Gene L action going up here in the house.
Well, one of the places I might have to stop by on my way out there would be one of the big Qualcomm headquarters nearby here. Get some of those communication chips.
Yeah, those are handy too. We need some big fiber optic backbone routers and such so that we can link up all the teams of the team living.
Team living post zombie apocalypse.
Yep.
If everything goes to hell, well, we're the ones that are going to be able to put it back together.
There you go.
Yep. And obviously there'll be a lot of ham radio operators involved.
Woohoo!
Yeah, I can't wait to get to some episodes to talk to some ham people. I know Addie's looking forward to that.
They're gonna just talk over my head, but it'll be fun.
Yeah, but you're working on getting your license. So.
Working on it.
She just hopes she gets it before before there's any numbing of brains.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, before the zombie breakout, you got to get your license before then.
But I
Yeah,
don't
wouldn't
think
that
the
be
FCC is going to come knocking on your door in
During
that
during-
situation.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
ma'am, you don't have your ham license.
Rawr.
I was gonna say, as long as you learn the techniques
terminology and all that.
and the
Yeah.
technology and the terminology and all the ins and outs of how to do that stuff, it won't matter too much if you actually have the license or not.
Yep. Yep. Now, as a self-learner, I guess, for especially for my ham stuff, what's your advice for all of the beginners who are first going into coding or DIY robotics and all that?
Well, first of all, just dive in, try it. Don't be afraid. I mean, one of the reasons why I got into it is just not knowing that I wasn't supposed to be able to do it. Right?
Sure.
I just sort of
That's great.
started trying to do it, and you know, I get a lot of people shaking their head at me with how I go about doing things, but I get results. You
Sure,
know,
yeah.
sometimes I don't. Sometimes it takes a little longer, but I think that in the long run, I probably end up learning a little bit more about it because I figured it out and went through the repetitive trying it over again different ways until it worked.
Right.
A lot of people, when they're told, here's how to do it, here's the right way, they don't ever really learn it. Mm-hmm. They just follow the motions for here's the prescribed way to do this particular thing. Mm-hmm. And you know, there's books about all the different methods, and the people that figured out those methods, they figured them out by just trying it, you know, and coming up with new ways of doing it that work better.
Right.
And you don't have to always go refer to somebody else's pre-written, pre-designed technique from a book or website or something. You know, I tend to, you know, for some things I'll go find something on the web and just use find some open source or free piece of code to do it. But there's some things that I just want to try it myself.
Right.
Just because, you know, I might come up with a better way to do it than the way that everyone else does it.
There you go.
And none of this stuff existed from the beginning of the universe. It was all a creation of clever people. Mm-hmm. And there's
Yeah, well, one of the things for me is, you know, coming up through the 80s, right, computers were still really new. And we didn't have books of, you know, design patterns and here's how to do this algorithm, that algorithm, because no one knew back then.
Right.
Back in 1981, 1982, you had a Commodore or VIC-20 or Atari or whatever computer you had, Apple II, and you were just, you know, plugging away on it, trying different stuff and figuring it out. And, you know, there was some people that were, you know, figuring out algorithms and translating them from the old big mainframes and mini computers and whatnot, but there was just a lot of hackers figuring it out. And,
Right.
You know, nowadays, since it's been around for a while, there's a lot more of the academic teaching methods and pre-prescribed ways of doing things that sort of, in my opinion, are kind of sterile. Kind of, you know, here's the way to do it, and don't really worry about, you know,
Why or
figuring it
how
out.
or yeah.
And so I definitely advocate the more trial and error mechanism of learning. Just dive in and do it. You know, I've got like a little bucket of fried chips and electronic circuits that, you know, I hooked it up the wrong way or I overpowered one piece or another. And I'm just like, well, you know, oh well.
Oh well.
Try again.
There you go.
yeah, that's how we learn. This has gone pretty well, guys.
Yeah.
I have one more question.
One more? I
Okay.
think we got
Yes.
time for one more.
In Team Living of the Zombie Apocalypse Survival Team, what would your nickname be?
My nickname.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know.
Anything that comes to mind?
Well, this is one particular area for me that I've always struggled with coming up with names.
And
'Cause,
his
like, I
his
use
Twitter,
my real name for everything.
yeah, his
Roy
Twitter is
Eltham.
Roy Eltham, his YouTube. It's all just Roy. Eltham. You
Yeah.
you can find him easy.
And even in coding, like when we're at work coming up with our different modules of the code and classes, mine are all the really generic, whatever the thing is doing, that's what it's called.
In
And
the
other people come up with these, names for their classes or their managers or objects or whatever, and I'm just like, whatever. Blah blah blah. It does this.
Very well.
Graphics renderer. It's called graphics renderer.
Well, so Roy Eltham will be Roy Eltham.
yeah, and he will bring Roy Eltham's cat
Absolutely.
in a very, very well defended cat carrier, considering that Roy Eltham's cat is a zombie cat.
Yeah, he's used up a couple of those 9 lives.
So I think that pretty much wraps up our time on this one. Seemed to go well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I had a lot of fun.
Yay.
Can't wait till we get back around and we get to have Roy on again. Maybe we'll have some updates on Res 2D.
Yeah, so Res 2D updates, some pinball updates, talk about UPEW and stuff like that.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, so until next time, this is Whisker
Addie.
and Mr. Roy Eltham.
Roy Eltham.
Catch you later.
Bye.
Bye.
We post videos all the time, so don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at TYMKRS.